Right. Okay, so I've seen a thread online, and not just not even just a thread. Like, it happens all the time, and it's a very frustrating thing for a traditional witch. Um, Frustrating and also annoying. Um, I get mistaked for a Wiccan all the time, like all the time. Um, People find out I'm a witch. They say, "Oh, so how long have you been practicing Wicca?" And it's like, "Well, I haven't been practicing Wicca. I don't practice Wicca." I wanted to do a video in comparison to Wicca and traditional craft and the differences between Wicca and traditional craft. And I wanted to do this because I feel like a lot of people are getting it mixed up as to actually what it is. Now, traditional craft is a practice, it's a craft. This is the thing, not all Wiccans practice witchcraft and not all witches practice Wicca. That's what you need to get first of all, and that's so true. Wicca is an earth-based neo-pagan religion. It was founded by Gerald Gardner in the 1950s, and he drew from all different sources. You get different types of traditions of Wicca as well. You get Gardnerian Wicca and Alexandrian Wicca. Now, Wicca is about 60 years old now. Traditional craft goes back way longer than that, way longer. However, there are some forms of traditional craft, like, for instance, Clan of Tubal Cain. They're actually younger than Wicca. But then there are other different strands of traditional British craft, such as Cornish Pella, Craft, and Cornish witchcraft, which goes back a really long time. George Pickingale, stuff like that. That's quite old. Pardon me. But as I said, there are different types of traditional witchcraft. Robert Cochrane tradition is very, very young. He claimed it was older than Wicca. However, there was actually no evidence in order to support that argument. Now, as I said, Wicca, religion; witchcraft, practice. Well, traditional witchcraft practice. Traditional witches can be Christian. Traditional witches can be pagan. Traditional witches can even be satanic. Traditional witchcraft, there's room for your own religion there. You can incorporate your own religion into it. And the majority of traditional witches are pagan. But as I said, it's a craft, it's a practice. And there are different forms of traditional craft, as I said. Other things, I don't know, the tools. In traditional craft, we have a stang. We do have a chalice, but that again has been adopted from Wicca. That we have picked various things from Wicca over the ages, and people can't turn around and say that we haven't, because we have. It's obvious. A chalice, a knife. Traditional witchcraft is a reconstructionist belief. It's reconstruction of what we interpret would have happened. As I said, some traditions are old and are way back when. In terms of our tools, we have a cauldron, we have a besom or a broom. We have something called a blasting rod. Now, a blasting rod is normally used to send out curses or healing, but it's mainly for curses. It's normally made out of blackthorn. And then, of course, we have the wand, and the wand can be made out of oak, it can be made out of hazel or willow. It depends. What else is different? We have cords in Wicca. They have cords. As is Molly, the witch is called. In Wicca it is as well. I'm trying to think of other differences in terms of ritual. In terms of ritual, Wiccans cast a circle where they make the place around them sacred and they call the gods. In traditional craft, we do what's known as laying a compass or compass round. Now, Laying a compass is slightly different. We believe that the earth is sacred enough, so there is no need to make sacred what is already sacred. In laying a compass, we believe that sacredness is all around us. We don't call the gods. We go to the gods. We go to the spirit world rather than call them. We go to them. So it's very much, it's quite, it can be quite trance-like as well. I incorporate a lot of hedge witchery into my style, stuff like that. So yeah, in terms of ritual, there's different. The stang as well represents the horned one, but also represents world tree or axis mundi, which basically you have the heavens, you have our world, and you have the underworld. Normally, after laying a compass, the stang will be normally put at the north position of the compass. It will move, especially during Sabbats as well. It will move around. In covens. Oh, sorry, and the stang will also be decorated according to what season it is. So, for instance, in Yule we'll have holly berries around it and stuff like that. In Samhain we'll have bits of yew around it. It will go on. Beltane as well. We'll have We'll have garlands around it, ring garlands with ribbons hanging off. Midsummer. It goes on. We have different things. Acorns around it in midsummer, roses as well to represent the rose queen, an aspect of the goddess. Now, traditional craft in our covens, our hierarchy can be quite different as well. You have what's known as, rather than a high priest or a high priestess, you have a magister or a devil, or you have, for a high priestess, it would be called a witch queen. They basically do the same thing. Rather, in initiation as well, we do initiation, but we also do what's known as passing the power. The power can be passed through a ritualistic action, or it can also be passed down through sexual activities, stuff like that. The belief that the power is within your blood and is within your own bodily fluids. Excuse me. In Wicca, you get the Great Riot and stuff like that. We also have something what's called as a summoner. Now, the summoner is somebody who channels to the spirit world. Normally in traditional covens, they wear a squirrel mask, some traditions, and it represents climbing up and down the world tree. So it represents they go from heaven to the earth to deliver messages, or they'll go from the earth to the underworld to deliver messages from the underworld. And that's why they wear the squirrel mask, which is a representation of climbing up and down the axis mundi. I'm trying to think of different, more differences between Wicca. Oh yeah, the basic one. Wicca goes by the Wiccan creed, do what thou wilt and ye harm none. In traditional craft, we take on the role of personal responsibility. The idea that you take personal responsibility for your actions, and that is it. You are the one that takes responsibility for your actions, and you deal with the consequences of what you have done. If you think that person has done enough to get cursed, then that is up to you. It's your own responsibility. I'm trying to think. There are some different clans of traditional witches I know who only do the 4 main fire festivals, which is Yule, Samhain, Beltane and Midsummer. There are those people that will do that 4 main fire festivals, and then there are those that will do the 8. Me, normally I do 4, but in traditional craft as well, you get Michaelmas, St. John's Eve. We have different nights for different things, different purposes. Michaelmas, normally we bless all the altar tools. We consecrate them and bless them, and stuff like that. St. John's Eve, we just work magic and work shitloads of magic on that night. But again, it depends what different clan you come from. Also, in traditional craft, we don't normally. There is no set way how to do things in terms of operative witchcraft, which is witchcraft you do for magic. Ritualistic witchcraft is religious witchcraft, so to speak. It's the more ritual side of it, but operative witchcraft is the magical side of it. In operative witchcraft, things tend to be a lot more freer flowing. There's no sort of dogma that we go by. If it feels right to us, that is how we do it. So, for instance, you can go to one traditional witch's circle and they will do a love spell completely different. However, you will come into my circle or my compass and I will do a love spell using mandrake. It differentiates. There's a lot of differences between Wicca and traditional witchcraft. Traditional witchcraft as well, through songs and poetry, we learn different skills. You know, so many different, there's different folk songs that pass on that have hidden meanings to traditional witches. Wiccans normally tend to work outside, they work in temples and stuff like that. Traditional witchcraft, we work outside a lot. We don't really do skyclad as well. We're also known as what's called robed covens. We don't get naked, we don't do, well, sometimes, but the majority of the time it's clothed, it's robed, a robed coven. Traditional witches will often work in churchyards, in particular old ruined churchyards, because 9 times out of 10 where churches were built, prehistoric pagan sites were also put upon them. I'm giving off a lot of information. I can feel myself rambling. It's frustrating when I'm constantly getting called Wicca, and I kind of want to show people, hey, I'm not a Wiccan, I'm a traditional witch. Not that I have a problem with Wicca, however, what I do have a problem with is when people constantly tell me that I'm Wiccan when I'm not. It's really annoying. Traditional witches as well, we tend not to do the whole media witch thing as much as Wicca does. Wicca uses the media witches a lot. Very rarely in traditional craft you get media witches. Robert Cochrane was a bit of a showman, and he was. In terms of the stuff he'd done, he was a bit of a illusionist, and he was very magical, no doubt about that, but he did believe that magic was also about psychology. A lot of stuff that went into magic was to do with psychology. So yeah, don't tend to do the whole media witch thing. It's not very fluffy as well. Traditional witches are not afraid to use blood in their magic. They're not afraid to I'm going to say it. Some traditional witches are not afraid to hurt animals in their spells in order to use various parts of animals. I haven't myself, but I do know some traditional witches that do. So yeah, the use of blood is a lot. We tend to do a lot more spirit work as well in traditional witchcraft. We tend to house spirits a lot more. Of course, we have familiars, but in traditional witchcraft, it's a lot based on the spirit world. When we work in the underworld, we go into what's known as Anwin. In different various traditions do. Some people call them Anwin, some people call it Nick Navan. What else? Oh, sorry. Yeah, so there's a lot of spirit work incorporated into that rather than Wicca. With Wicca, it's morely the gods. I mean, in traditional witchcraft, some traditions we do work with the gods. You know, I work with the gods personally. We have the god and goddess as well in traditional witchcraft. And all the other gods. But in traditional witchcraft as well, people will work with saints. You know, we have the 4 elements as well in traditional craft. We do espats. Robert Cochrane tradition as well, Clan of Tubal Cain, they came up with a ritual to draw down the moon, which was a traditional craft version of drawing down the moon, of the Wiccan ritual, which it originally was. So there are some similarities, but in terms of practice, you know, we look into the folklore of the land a lot more. Pardon me, that was gross. You know, we look into the folklore in the lands a lot more. Songs, poetry, legends, stuff like that. Fairies, herb lore, wart cunning, the use of plants, the knowledge of herbs and plants are used a lot more old traditional spells and charms and chants and so forth. So, you know, and spirit work. So there is a big difference between traditional witches and Wiccans, and it's really annoying when I get called a Wiccan, because I'm not. I'm a traditional witch. I'm not Wiccan at all, really. But yeah, just wanted to do that. Just the sort of differences between traditional witchcraft and Wicca. I kind of feel like this video was morely information on traditional witchcraft, but there you are. Over and out.